Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, I have a nice little sailing ship diorama by Steve Good. I've already got the patterns printed out, prepped, and attached to our material with clear packing tape, and it's one of his newer pattern offerings from 2025 in case you guys were curious and wanted to download it and try it out in your garage or workshops. And this pattern has a very cool visual element to it, which is why I wanted to bring it to life visually over here on the platform. And the full design is going to be a classic sailing ship in a bottle design. So a really neat visual to cut out completely over on the scroll saw, and really cool to make as a gift for anyone who lives at the beach or loves sailing ships and ship history in general. Ships and bottles are very cool works of art, and I've seen them before. You know, the delicate intricacies of going in the lid of the jar and going down in there and building a little ship and then putting the cap on it and making people wonder, hey, how was that made? We're going to make one completely from start to finish over on the scroll saw. It's going to comprise of 5 layers of 1/4 inch material, and I am going to go on and stack cut and make 2 of those in today's video. So it's a total of 10 layers here of the 1/4 inch material, and we will of course finish one in today's video throughout the course from start here to the finish. But here you see one of the layers. This is the middle of the 5 layers. You can see I've got written on it layer 3 there. Really nice visual here of a classic old school sailing ship with the rigging, the sails and everything. Just a nice little silhouette there encapsulated in the shape of a bottle. The next layer, you have the profile of the ship there, and it looks like it's got a little lifeboat behind it. And then you have another side of the ship. So once you get all 5 layers sandwiched together during the assembly process, it's going to make a cool 3-dimensional element to the ship in the bottle, which is always a cool visual when it comes to scroll saw woodworking projects. Here you see the top layer, and it's got a wavy bottom that looks like the ship is floating in the bottle itself. And then the back layer itself has a nice little lighthouse on a hill with some trees, and then either the sunrise or the sunset on the background. I hope with a project like this, since you're going to have 5 layers that you're going to have to sandwich together, I hope it goes without saying that you need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work and be as loyal as you can be to the cut line. So hopefully everything will line up smoothly and seamlessly once you get to the glue up and assembly process. Now this project has some round portholes on the side of the ship on 3 of the layers. What I'm going to do is take those pieces over to the drill press and drill the appropriate size hole for those, so we are not cutting out a bunch of little circles over at the scroll saw, just to save a little bit of time, so to speak. But then I'll bring all 5 layers back to the workbench and drill out the rest of the pilot holes with the Seiko scroller's drill. With summer 2025 right around the corner, I felt that this would be an appropriate project to make to celebrate and anticipate those bright sunshiny days that's going to be summer 2025. So since everything is pretty much prepped and prepared, let's move the camera over to the drill press to drill the first set of pilot holes before coming back to the workbench and drill the rest of them. Let's get started. And over here on the drill press, we're taking a larger than normal drill bit to drill out the portholes on the side of the ship. And after they are drilled out, we will step back over to the workbench and use the Seiko scroller's drill with a tiny drill bit to drill out the rest of the pilot holes. And you'll note that I have a backer board behind the scroll saw work to prevent blowout of the pilot holes on the reverse side. But after they are all drilled out, we will head over to the Rikon scroll saw and begin scrolling. For all of the scroll saw work on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through both layers of our 1/4 inch material here exceptionally well with minimal chip out. You guys know that I love to stack cut whenever possible to not only get multiples of the projects that I cut out over at the scroll saw, but to also offer some form of support with the extra layers to the fragile areas you cut out in scroll saw projects. If you guys would like to try this pattern, it's available as a free pattern download at Steve Good's scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com website over in his free pattern catalog. When he uploaded this design, I knew I would have to make it and bring it to life over here on the platform, because I just love maritime history of the ships, from the beautiful sailing ships like the one we are cutting out here to the modern cruise ships that are now sailing the high seas. But I am, as always, beginning with some of the smaller internal cuts before proceeding to the larger interior cuts as I make my way through this project. as always, taking my time and letting the blade do the work. But now we will switch to a close-up view to get a better vantage point of the scrolling process. And here I am working on the layer that has the lighthouse on the hill, and with the small windows there, sometimes it feels like with those smaller cuts it takes longer to rethread the blade through the pilot hole and retension the blade than it does to do the actual bit of scroll saw work. But again, I'm just taking my time and letting the blade do the work and being as loyal as I can be to the cut line. And one thing I really love about layered scroll saw designs like this one is that some of the individual layers can be their own standalone projects and have their own visual interpretations, as opposed to using all 5 layers like we will use in this project here. But we are almost done with scrolling. It is now time to release the 5 layers from the waste wood, and I'll be cutting out 5 identical shapes of the bottle here. I want to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And if you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. But now that all of the scroll saw work is done, it is time to step over to the workbench again, and we will remove all of the individual pieces from the waste wood, and I will collect one full project here and set the other 5 layers aside. And now we will get our first visual of the finished design, and it'll be time for sanding with 180 grit Klingspor woodworking shop sandpaper and the vibrating palm sander. And I'll sand the front and back of all 5 layers very carefully with small circular motions. I'm being careful here because the pieces are fragile. But then it will be time for glue up, and for glue up I'll be using medium grade CA glue and activator, and the CA glue works pretty quickly, so I have to work fast here, but I'm still doing my best to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And after I spray it with the activator, after everything is glued up, I'll set it aside for around 5 minutes to make sure that that glue has completely dried and cured. But then I will step over to the belt sander and I'll just quickly flush sand around the perimeter of the bottle, making sure everything is nice and smooth. But then I will be adding a splash of color with a very light shade of Minwax wood stain. It's light enough to where it does not mask off the natural grains and textures of the 1/4 inch material we used. But I wiped off all of the excess and hung it on a hook to dry. And when it was dry to the touch, I opted to add a nice decorative base. And this is an actual piece of driftwood I picked up off of the coast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we close the video. But I'm just eyeballing everything here. But I will glue the ship in a bottle to the base with more medium grade CA glue and activator. And once it dries and cures, it'll be time for a finish. And for a finish, I used several coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss. It helps give the project a nice glossy appearance and gives it protection for years to come. And after that set in the doorway and dried, I wanted to add an extra decorative touch. So I got some seashells that we've also picked up along the coast of Myrtle Beach and glued them along the base. And once that was done, the project was complete. And here we have the completed miniature ship in a bottle diorama, cut out completely over on the scroll saw, and it finished up beautifully with some very nice and tropical decor elements in it. Thank you once again to Steve Good for another fantastic design from your pattern catalog. Once again, it's one of his newest pattern offerings from April 2025, in case you guys would like to go and download it and try it out in your garage or workshops. But really, really beautiful design elements in this project. You, of course, have the standout feature, which is the ship sailing across the high seas these with the sunrise or sunset in the corner. And then over here on the hill you have the historical lighthouse with some trees and everything, all encapsulated in the shape of a bottle. It took me around 40 minutes to scroll everything out completely from start to finish. It is a very tedious project to cut out, in my opinion, because you need to, of course, with the nature of the 5 layers stacking together, and you want to make sure they all line up smoothly and seamlessly, you need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work and be as loyal as you can be to the cut line. But if you take your time, everything should come out nice and crisp. I hope you guys like how this one here finished up. You guys did see after I had finished up the scroll saw work and we had sanded everything up and glued everything together and it had dried, I went over to the belt sander and just done a perimeter sanding around the edge just to make sure everything was nice and smooth after the glue up. And you can see the 5 layers of 1/4 inch material there. And because it is 5 layers of 1/4 inch material, it of course does not need a base like I have added here, and I want to talk about that here in a moment. With the thickness of the 5 layers of 1/4 inch material, it can easily freestand on a shelf, desk, or countertop of its own accord. But after everything was done, I stained everything with a very light shade of Minwax wood stain to still allow the natural grains, shades, and textures of the material we used to shine through. And then after we had made the base and it had dried from being glued up, we gave everything a few coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and you can see after it dried it does have a nice glossy sheen in the lights of the workshop there. So everything once again is encapsulated in the shape of a basic bottle. So really cool. I do want to talk about the base here before I go into the pattern's versatility, as I always do over here on these videos. The base is a piece of driftwood and it does have a story behind it. It washed up on the coast of Myrtle Beach during the tropical and devastating Hurricane Helene last year in September of 2024. And my thoughts and prayers are still with everyone affected by that tropical storm, you know, seeing the news and everything, you know, just how far that storm went and everything. But we were actually on the family vacation in September of 2024 in Myrtle Beach when the storm came through. And it kind of just glanced Myrtle Beach, you know, and we just got a lot of wind and rain while we were there. But after the storm had moved on, I walked out on the beach just to survey everything, you know. There was some awnings blown down, some branches on the beach and everything. But I happened upon a log that had washed up on the beach in front of the resort we stayed at, and I went and collected it. I put it in a trash bag and I brought it back home and let it dry for a couple months, and then I took it to my buddy Sam at Knighthood Creations, and he slabbed some of it for me on his bigger bandsaw. And here's another piece that I could have used for the base. But after these had dried completely out in the workshop, I knew that I wanted to use one of them for a featured project. And once I seen this project pop up in Steve Good's daily blog post, I knew that this could potentially be a project that I used the driftwood for. And I didn't think about that initially. After I got out here and started prepping everything the day before, I'm like, hey, I could use a piece of driftwood for the base and that would be a nice tropical element. And I hope you guys agree with that. And anytime we go to the beach, the coast, do a day trip down there or anything, we always come back with a bag full or pocket full of seashells. And that is what was in that blue antique jar there that we have collected over the years, just multiple trips down to the beach and the coast and everything. And I brought them out here and poured them out on the workbench, and I just hot glued a few of the smaller ones on the base there just to show how far one individual scroll saw woodworking pattern and project can go. And hopefully you guys agree with how everything is tied together. Now of course, if you are good with acrylic craft paints, you could go in here and paint everything up to really give it a nice tropical flair. And if you wanted to use exotic or hardwoods as opposed to just basic 1/4 inch material like I used, you could totally do that. But I do want to talk about the pattern's versatility here. Again, we stack cut in today's layer, and that was 5 layers of 1/4 inch material, and I have the other one disassembled here. I've yet to finish it, laying on the table saw here. And I feel like if you wanted to use just the individual layers of the pattern that Steve offers, you could. You could totally just cut out this layer here that has the ship on it, you know, the sailing ship, and you could go in and just make this, put a nice tropical blue backer board on it, and it could be its own standalone design. Or you could cut it out of thicker material, say 3/4 inch or an inch thick, and then fill it with colored epoxies or resins if you were good with that, and it could be its own standalone design again. If you liked going to see the historical lighthouses. I've yet to go see one. I really want to go see some of them, but if you like lighthouses, you could of course just cut out this layer that has the lighthouse on the hills with the trees and the sunrise or sunset in the corner and use this as a photo frame. You know, if you took a nice photo of a real lighthouse, you could put it in here, or maybe your family, a group shot, you know, on the beach, it could go in here and have the nice tropical lighthouse on the corner there. So another option. And then I also think with just the first layer that makes up the frame here that has the few waves there at the bottom that simulate the waves or the sand of the beach, you could stack cut 4 or 5 of these and make a nice little bottle shaped shadow box that you could put little trinkets in and hang it on a wall or something. But again, always options and versatility for each and every scroll saw woodworking pattern and project you come across. But I hope along the way from the start of the video to now, you guys like how I finished up this beautiful tropical Steve Good design. I felt it was appropriate with summertime 2025 fast approaching to get out here and make a project that was summer themed. And I hope that this project fulfills that summertime vibe that I am anticipating. I am anticipating summertime fun for 2025, my friends. But really, really cool. Had a lot of fun in today's video, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make the project from start to finish, and hopefully along the way you picked up a tip, trick, tidbit, or even an idea for scroll saw woodworking and scroll saw projects in general. That's going to about wrap it up for today's video. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.